President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu just held a meeting at Mar-a-Lago. What came out of it changes everything. An $8.6 billion arms deal. Intelligence revealing Iran rebuilt 2,000 ballistic missiles. And a coordinated strategy that could trigger the biggest Middle East transformation in decades. Meanwhile, Iranian streets are erupting. 29 protesters dead. Over 1,200 arrested. The regime is in what officials call survival mode. And what connects these two storylines is something most analysts are completely missing. This is January 2026. Iran is experiencing its largest wave of protests since 2022. According to some news agency, demonstrations have erupted at 222 locations across 78 cities in 26 provinces. What started in Tehran has spread to small towns and rural areas. This isn't just an urban uprising. This is nationwide. The numbers are grim. 29 protesters confirmed dead. More than 1,200 arrested in just 9 days. At least 51 injured, most from pellet and rubber bullets. The deadliest single incident happened in Malak-Shahi, Elam province. Security forces killed at least 5 protesters there, injured 30 others. But what triggered this explosion? Iran's currency just collapsed. The US dollar now trades at approximately 1.47 million rials. 1 year ago, just 820,000 rials. That's an 80% devaluation in 12 months. Every Iranian's savings just evaporated. Monday was the breaking point. Shopkeepers in Tehran shut down their stores. Coordinated strike. Thousands flooded the streets. Anti-riot police responded with tear gas. The crowds didn't disperse. They're still out there. Mohammad Reza Farshin, head of Iran's central bank, resigned Monday. A former economy minister replaced him. His job? Stabilize a free-falling economy. Most analysts consider this task nearly impossible given current conditions, though the outcome remains to be seen. And there's something else making this worse. Much worse. Iran is in severe drought. Some regions have seen scattered rainfall recently, but nothing close to normal for this time of year. The water crisis compounds the economic emergency. Millions depend on agriculture for survival. That sector is collapsing. To understand why this moment is different, we need to go back 47 years. 1979, the Islamic Revolution. The Shah falls. Ayatollah Khomeini takes power. The clerics establish a theocratic system that's ruled Iran ever since. Now listen to what students at Isfahan University are chanting. Death to the dictator. They're talking about Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei, and they're saying something else. This criminal system has taken our future hostage for 47 years. Here's what most people don't understand about Iran's government. Iran has a president, Masoud Pezeshkian, but he's largely a figurehead. The real power? Supreme Leader Khamenei. He controls the military, the judiciary, the Revolutionary Guards, everything that matters. Pezeshkian acknowledged the protesters have legitimate grievances. He posted on social media asking the Interior Minister to listen, to engage in dialogue, to resolve problems responsibly. But Khamenei? His response was direct. He ordered that rioters must be put in their place. Security forces interpreted that as permission. Live ammunition, tear gas, pellet guns. 29 people are dead because of that order. And now something unprecedented is happening. The protests aren't just students anymore. Workers at Tehran's central fruit and vegetable market have joined the strikes. University students and market workers standing together. That cross-section signals something deeper. The discontent has penetrated every layer of Iranian society. While Iranian streets erupted, something significant happened at Mar-a-Lago. President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu met this week. What came out of that meeting reveals a deepening alignment between Washington and Jerusalem. Trump was effusive. He called their relationship extraordinary, praised Netanyahu's wartime leadership. With other people, Israel may not exist right now, Trump said. He's a wartime prime minister. He's done a phenomenal job. He's taken Israel through a very dangerous period of trauma. But the praise wasn't the story. What Netanyahu brought with him was. Netanyahu presented Israeli intelligence estimates. Iran now possesses around 2,000 ballistic missiles. That's approximately the same stockpile Iran held before recent conflicts. More concerning? Israeli intelligence suggests their previous strikes on Iran's ballistic missile program were less effective than initially believed. Trump's response was unambiguous. He would support Israeli strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities if needed. He'd even consider joint U.S.-Israeli military action. That's a significant escalation in stated American commitment. The discussions also covered Gaza. Trump indicated multiple countries want to help disarm Hamas. But Netanyahu presented critical intelligence. Hamas still possesses approximately 60,000 Kalashnikov rifles in Gaza. Both leaders agreed. Hamas must be completely disarmed before any peace plan moves forward. Netanyahu stood firm on one issue in particular: Turkey. Netanyahu told Trump that Israel would not allow Turkish troops in the region. Israel cannot accept a Turkish military presence in Gaza. Reports suggest Trump appeared to accept this position, though no formal agreement has been publicly confirmed. Then came the Pentagon announcement: an $8.6 billion Boeing contract, 25 F-15 fighter jets for Israel by 2035, with an option for 25 more. The Department of Defense stated the contract covers design, integration, instrumentation, testing, production, and delivery. Work starts in St. Louis, Missouri. Completion expected December 2035. And there's one more thing Trump reportedly discussed. According to reports, Trump talked with Israeli President Isaac Herzog about pardoning Netanyahu, relieving the prime minister of ongoing legal battles. Trump said such a pardon is on its way. However, the specific details and timeline of this potential pardon have not been officially confirmed. Iranian officials have described their government as being in survival mode. That's not rhetoric. That's their actual assessment. The regime faces simultaneous economic collapse and potential external military threats. They're fighting for existence. Ali Shamkhani, political advisor to Ayatollah Khamenei, issued a threat, in Hebrew, on social media, directed at Israel and the United States. Here's exactly what he said. Under Iran's defense doctrine, some responses are determined even before the threats reach the implementation stage. Iran's missile and defense capabilities are uncontrollable and do not require authorization. Any aggression will be met with a severe, immediate, and unexpected response. President Pezeshkian framed the crisis in stark terms. We are in a full-scale war with the United States, Israel, and Europe. They don't want our country to remain stable. Iranian officials went further. They warned that U.S. bases in the region are legitimate targets. That's a direct threat. Raises the possibility of wider regional conflict. Meanwhile, Israel isn't staying quiet. Several Israeli accounts on social media have openly encouraged Iranian protesters. One account is possibly linked to Mossad intelligence, though this connection has not been officially verified. Former Prime Minister Naftali Bennett has also publicly supported the protesters. They're calling on Iranians to overthrow the Ayatollah regime. Trump issued his own stark warning. Now, I hear that Iran is trying to build up again, and if they are, we're going to have to knock them down. We'll knock them down. "We'll knock the hell out of them." He added that if Iran violently kills protesters, the United States would come to their rescue. Iran would be hit very hard. But there's another layer to this story, one that millions of people are watching closely. For millions of Christians and some Jewish scholars worldwide, what's happening in Iran isn't just geopolitics. They see potential fulfillment of ancient biblical prophecies about the end times. The most frequently cited prophecy, Ezekiel chapters 38 and 39, written around 593 BC. Over 2,600 years ago, Scripture describes a coalition from the north rising against Israel in the last days. That coalition specifically includes Persia. That's the ancient name for modern Iran. Many Bible scholars see current Iran-Israel tensions as stage setting for this prophecy. One pastor observed, "While what we are seeing today is not the full fulfillment of that prophecy, it is certainly a foreshadowing." This represents a theological interpretation, not a factual prediction. The alignment is striking. Iran as Israel's primary adversary. Alliance structures forming in the region. Groups like Hezbollah, Hamas, Syrian regime connections. The coalitions Ezekiel described bear resemblance to what exists today. But there's another prophecy, one that's even more specific about Iran itself. Jeremiah chapter 49, verses 35 through 39. The prophet speaks specifically about Elam. That's an ancient region corresponding to parts of modern Iran. Jeremiah predicted the scattering of the Iranian people thousands of years ago. Some scholars interpret this as relating to the diaspora following the 1979 Islamic Revolution. Others see it pointing to potential future regime collapse. These are theological interpretations of ancient text, not verifiable predictions. But here's what's remarkable. Jeremiah's prophecy concludes with a promise of restoration. The text says, God will restore the fortunes of Elam in days to come. Some scholars interpret this as spiritual restoration, and there's evidence supporting that interpretation. Over the past 20 years, reports indicate the fastest-growing church in the world has been the underground church in Iran. Despite severe persecution, Christianity has spread rapidly among disillusioned Iranians, particularly the younger generation. Biblical prophecy also speaks of end-times conflicts involving a king of the south. This is traditionally interpreted as an alliance of nations facing off against Israel, opposing a northern alliance. Iran's role as resistance leader against Israel, combined with alliances with Hezbollah, Hamas, and the former Syrian regime, has led many to identify Iran as connected to this prophesied southern coalition. The weakening of Iranian proxy forces in recent conflicts is seen by some prophetic interpreters as potentially significant. The degradation of Hamas in Gaza, Hezbollah in Lebanon. Iranian influence following Assad regime collapse in Syria. If Iran's Islamic regime were to fall, it could fundamentally alter the Middle East's prophetic alignment. It could potentially open the door to the spiritual awakening in Iran that some believe Jeremiah prophesied. A transformation from a regime hostile to faith into something entirely different. However, whether or when such a transformation might occur remains unknown. What happens in Iran doesn't stay in Iran. If the regime falls, every regional power calculation changes overnight. The following represents analysis of potential scenarios, not confirmed predictions. Saudi Arabia and Israel have been quietly moving toward normalization. A fallen Iranian regime could potentially accelerate that process. The primary obstacle to broader Arab-Israeli peace has been Iran's opposition and its proxy forces. But regime collapse creates another problem. Who fills the vacuum? Russia maintains significant interests in Iran. military cooperation, economic ties, access to warm water ports. China depends on Iranian oil. Both nations have invested heavily in keeping the current regime stable. If protests succeed, Moscow and Beijing face difficult choices. Support regime change and lose influence? Prop up the Ayatollahs and risk backing a losing side? Neither option is attractive. How they respond remains to be seen. Then there's the proxy network. Hezbollah in Lebanon, militias in Iraq, Houthis in Yemen. All receive funding, weapons, and direction from Tehran. That entire structure depends on Iranian support. Without Tehran's backing, this network could collapse, which creates both opportunities and dangers. The exact consequences would depend on how quickly change occurs and whether alternative funding sources emerge. The oil market is watching closely. Iran controls significant production capacity. More importantly, the Strait of Hormuz, about 21% of global petroleum passes through that narrow waterway. Instability there sends oil prices soaring. Some analysts suggest Iranian regime change could stabilize markets long-term. Others warn of short-term chaos, potential supply disruptions, regional conflict spreading to oil infrastructure. The actual market impact would depend on many variables that cannot be predicted with certainty. The question everyone's asking: what happens in the next 72 hours? The following represents possible outcomes based on current conditions, not predictions of what will occur. Right now, 3 scenarios are in play. Scenario 1. The regime crushes the protests. Brutal crackdown, mass arrests, international condemnation, but the Ayatollahs survive. We've seen this before. Scenario 2. Protests intensify. Security forces split. Some refuse orders. The regime fractures from within. Revolutionary change happens fast. Days, not months. Scenario 3. External intervention. Trump follows through on threats. Israeli strikes on nuclear facilities. Regional war erupts, while Iran burns internally. Intelligence sources suggest decisions are being made right now. Not next week. Not next month. Now. However, the specific decisions being made and their outcomes remain unknown. The Iranian people are watching their currency collapse, their futures evaporate. Their government order them shot in the streets, while their leaders threaten regional war. Trump and Netanyahu are coordinating strategy. $8 billion in weapons, 2,000 Iranian missiles, 60,000 Hamas rifles. Ancient prophecies, some say, are aligning. 29 protesters are already dead. How many more before something breaks? The next 72 hours could determine whether we're watching the fall of a regime, or just another chapter in a longer story. Iran is at the crossroads. The world is watching, and nobody knows which direction this turns.